My family believed my brother who framed me for cheating and now want to reconcile after they found out the truth. Sarah, my high school sweetheart, 45 female, and I, 45 male, were married. Jane, 24 years old, Tori, 22 years old, Brianna, 21 years old, and Claire, 18 years old, were our 4 daughters. Sarah and I began dating immediately when we were 14 years old. Sarah's parents adored her and saw her as the daughter they never had. My father sat me down and gave me advice, such as to think things through before making decisions and to maintain excellent communication with your spouse. After learning that Sarah was expecting Jane while we had been dating for 7 years, Sarah and I were ecstatic. We soon got married and started our lovely family. My 43-year-old brother Jack was the only issue. My relationship with Jack was somewhat damaged by his constant crush on Sarah, but I tried to overlook it because he was my brother and Sarah had told me that she didn't feel the same way. My limit was when Jack learned about Sarah and my engagement. He tried to convince her to leave me and confessed his love for her, but she refused and told me. I was furious with Jack at this point and would have kicked him in the butt if Sarah hadn't urged me not to. It took Sarah and my parents, 68M and 66F, to persuade me not to cut my brother out of my life when I was ready to. My union with Sarah was blissful. We experienced highs and lows just like any other couple, but overall I wouldn't change a thing. We were an ardent couple who cherished each other and their kids above all else. After the incident, my brother and I had a better connection, and I genuinely thought he had moved past his obsession on Sarah. Little did I know, though, that he was not only still in love with Sarah, but also plotting to break us up. More than 6 years ago, after spending a week away for work, I returned home to find my brother, wife, and girls in the living room. My daughters and Sarah were crying, and they screamed at me as soon as they spotted me. "How could you have done this to me?" Sarah inquired. She said cheating when I inquired what she meant. I was taken aback when she accused me of infidelity, as I had never cheated on her in our 25 years of dating. My brother jumped in, saying that this coworker, who was also his friend, had confessed to him and sent him the proof when I asked what made her think I had cheated on her. She showed me some texts and pictures that proved I had cheated on her with a colleague. I broke down in tears and pleaded with Sarah to believe me, telling her that Jack was to blame. Before I could leave, she gave me a face slap and threw me out. Jane and Tori called me a lot of derogatory insults, but the one that hurt the most was, "You are a disgrace to our family." I unfortunately tried in vain for a long time to convince Sarah and the daughters that I would never cheat and to help them see reason. My dad claimed that if I were a male, I would make the divorce process easier when my parents disowned me. My girls didn't want to see me, and Sarah and I had already separated by the end of the year. My girls sent me a message at the beginning of 2017 stating that they had a new father figure in their lives, and that they loathed me and didn't want anything to do with me after Sarah and Jack got married. It was difficult, but with a lot of counseling, I was able to move on. I never gave up hope that my family would discover the truth, but I also learned to accept the possibility that they would not. I haven't spoken to any family members in 5 years until a few days ago. When I answered the phone after receiving a call from an unknown number, I said, "Hello? Who is this?" And my mother's weeping could be heard from the other side. "They wanted to meet me," she continued, "and they were sad." My mother told me this was a personal topic to discuss, but my family had discovered the truth about everything when I questioned why. I informed my mother that I would phone her when I felt ready to meet them, but that I didn't want anyone to get in touch with me until or unless I responded. She said she missed me and that she understood. We bid each other farewell, but to be completely honest, I still don't know what to do. Update. So on Saturday morning, I got to my parents' house. My mother answered the door when I rang. It seemed strange to me that she began crying and hugging me. I walked in after shaking hands with my dad. My mother inquired about my well-being and attempted to strike up a conversation. I said, "When you're depressed, you forget to eat," in response to her subsequent remarks that I looked much better and had lost weight. Then I inquired as to how they learned. According to my mother, Jack got into a fight with Sarah while intoxicated, saying something like, "I didn't plan all this, so I would take with your shit." Then Sarah had him tell the truth. Sarah and my girls wanted to get in touch with me, but my mother suggested that she get in touch with me instead. My dad got a little upset when I started laughing and said, "What's so funny?" I replied that my brother had probably spent years trying to get Sarah and me apart and had blown it all up. All he needed to do was remain silent and carry on living his lovely life. After my brother tried to get Sarah to flee with him, I asked my parents if they could picture how our lives would be if they and Sarah hadn't tried to persuade to forgive him. It was the first time I had ever seen my father cry in my 45 years of existence. He began to apologize, stating that while he had been a terrible parent, he, my mother, Sarah, and my daughters were all remorseful. I informed them that although it would take time, I would love to make amends. I managed not to cry. I responded yes when my mother asked whether she could give Sarah permission to get in touch with me. Then, curious about my life and my state of mind, they probed more. All in all, it exceeded my expectations. Sarah messaged me the following day, asking if she might give me a call. I responded a few hours later that she could, and she called me, not even 5 minutes after that. When she inquired how I was, I informed her that it could be worse given the circumstances. She answered that things are not going so well when I asked how she and our girls were doing. My brother was expelled by Sarah and my girls after he confessed out of regret. I questioned Sarah a few questions, like why she married Jack so soon after and why she didn't think I was telling the truth. She broke down in tears and claimed that my brother had been her pillar of support both before and after our divorce. I was astonished to hear Sarah say that they ultimately began dating and eventually got married because she became pregnant. I was a little surprised to hear that. She did as I asked, repeating what I had spoken. She sobbed a little more, but acknowledged that she understood when I informed her that I needed time and that the likelihood of us getting back together wasn't good. I love you is how she concluded our talk, and I simply said goodbye. Update 2. My mother served as a conduit for communication between my daughters and me. I messaged her to ask to see my daughters in a public setting, and she suggested a park. Yesterday was our meeting. My daughters were already there when I arrived. Jane, my 24-year-old, jumped on me before I could even process that I was seeing them for the first time in over 5 years. She begged me not to hate them while sobbing and apologizing again and over. She looked reluctant to release me as we held each other for a few minutes. Jane had to be removed from me by Claire, my 18-year-old. My 22-year-old daughter, Tori, asked me how I was. I gave her a couple fleeting glances. She had grown so much in the last few years, which still surprised me, but I could also kind of watch the previous 6 years fly before my eyes. After the divorce, I would to look at photos of Sarah, the girls, and myself together and miss the good old times. I began to question if life was still worthwhile at that point. After a short while, I told Tori that I had acquired a cat. I described him as my best buddy and claimed that I wouldn't be talking to her right now if it weren't for him. Upon saying this, all 3 of my daughters began to cry. Even though I was crying on the inside while I was staring at them, I managed to keep my poster together. They all pleaded with me to forgive them and expressed their regret for not believing me. I informed them that even though I still loved them unconditionally, it would take time for me to truly forgive them, and that they would have to prove their regret to me via deeds rather than words. When I saw that Jane had on a ring, I questioned her about it. She informed me that 2 years prior, she had tied the knot with her longtime partner. I was on the verge of crying at this time because I realized I had missed my daughter's wedding. She answered in a low voice, "Yes." When I inquired if he had gone down the aisle, I started crying uncontrollably because I was at my breaking point. I was obliged to take a seat. That a-hole took everything I had, and the moment I was most looking forward to, walking my daughter down the aisle, was stolen from me. I could tell Jane was depressed because I was crying uncontrollably. I assured her not to worry about it and that I would move past it. She simply gave me another wordless hug. That's how we were for what felt like a very long time. Once we released the hug, Jane apologized once more. My daughters agreed when I said that I needed a few days but would like to go on family therapy. Having a normal conversation with my girls felt fantastic as we caught up on each other's lives. After saying our goodbyes and exchanging phone numbers, I gave each and every one of them a lengthy, firm hug. Update 3. I've been getting messages from a user, and his advice on my circumstances has been really beneficial. I told him that our parents had always complimented Jack for his grades and that he was competitive in nature. This user thought my brother might be a narcissist and thought Sarah and my girls were awards. Last Saturday, my daughters and I went to therapy. I went in first and told the therapist about my worries about Jack becoming a narcissist. She informed me that although there was a chance, my worries might be valid. It was an excellent yet very emotional therapy session. I began by describing my feelings during this entire period and the numerous nights I wept over Sarah and the girls. How difficult it was all for me and how I had nightmares. My girls did speak, albeit it was difficult to understand what they were saying. They cried the entire time, and as time passed, their crying became worse, to the point that I had to comfort them and tell them I wasn't upset with them. The session is over, and we have our second session scheduled for this Friday. Although I'm not sure what will happen, I'm optimistic that I may mend my relationship with my girls. In addition, on Tuesday I had supper with my daughters. It went well and they got to meet my cat. They also brought copies of our photos, which was a lovely present.